the newsroom. Who says nothing ever happens in Egypt during Ramadan? 6 weeks after his inauguration, President Mohamed Morsi suddenly dismissing the head of the military, Field Marshal Mohammed Hussein Tantawi, who had held the post for more than 2 decades. The head of the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces, the SCAF, who before handing over to Egypt's first ever civilian president, had declared he was staying on and keeping control of the military's budget. Also gone, his deputy, the Chief of Staff, General Sami Anan, described as Cairo's conduit to Washington, the U.S., which gives more than $1.3 billion a year in aid, most of it military. For some, it's a given that you need to kick out the old guard. For others, this is a counter-coup by Morsi's Muslim Brotherhood, which by the same token takes back legislative powers, that is, until the recently dissolved parliament seats again. So, did Morsi catch the military wrong-footed? And what's next for Egypt? Today in the France 24 debate, Morsi makes his move. And with us from his home constituency of Luxor, MP Abdul Mawgoud Dardari. Welcome back to the France 24 debate. You're with the Muslim Brotherhood's Freedom and Justice Party from Cairo. The University of Exeter's Omar Ashour joins us here in our Paris studio, longtime Cairo correspondent, now back in her home country. Radio France's Claude Guibal, welcome. Welcome as well to Ahmed Mostafa, an Egyptian who's been watching it all from Paris. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. And from Washington, Gaudat Bagat, professor of national security affairs at National Defense University. Thank you for joining us. The France 24 debate, where you can always weigh in on the conversation on Facebook and on Twitter. You can follow us at François F24. 24 hours on, Egypt's military is showing no sign of opposing the president's surprise decision to retire, as we mentioned, 2 mainstays of the old regime. In fact, the only man in uniform who's been in front of the cameras this Monday is the new defense minister.
Egypt has a new defense minister after a showdown between the president and the remnants of the old regime. General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi was sworn in as new defense minister Sunday. Al-Sisi was the head of military intelligence following the fall of Hosni Mubarak. He was the official who admitted the military had carried out virginity tests on female protesters. President Mohamed Morsi forced the retirements of Defence Minister and former Military Council Chief Mohammed Tantawi and Army Chief of Staff Sami Anan. Morsi, who is Egypt's first civilian president, also cancelled the Army's June declaration that gave it power to quash the Constitutional Assembly, but he said his aim was not to be divisive.
To those attending and to the honourable Egyptian people, the decisions I took today were not meant ever to target certain persons, nor did I intend to embarrass institutions.
Both Tantawi and Anan have been given advisor roles in the current government. In total, 7 members of the military's top brass were removed from their posts. Morsi now holds executive and legislative powers as well as the power to name a constituent assembly. Some Egyptians see it as a new dawn, others as a power grab.
It can be said that starting today, the country is no longer under military rule. Military rule is now over, and Egypt will become a civil state in which everyone will be entitled to their rights.
This is an illegitimate decision. Morsi exceeded his mandate and seized the mandate of the Military Council according to the Constitutional Declaration by firing Tantawi and Anan, and he has cancelled the Constitutional Declaration, so this decision is illegitimate.
The president wants new blood in the military hierarchy. His new defence minister was the youngest member of the former ruling military council.
All right, let's begin in Cairo. Omar Ashour, were you surprised by the announcements that came through Sunday?
I was not so surprised. There was some indications that the President Mohamed Morsi is going in that direction. If you look at the government formation, 10 out of the 35 ministries were handed to pro-revolution figures. All of them were in critical posts to enhance the mobilization capacity of the revolutionary forces. So you had the labor minister from the revolutionary ranks, the youth minister, the religious endowment minister, the justice minister, the higher education ministers. So you have all these ministries that can enhance mobilization capacity and give religious and legal legitimacy to the pro-revolutionary forces were given to pro-revolution ministers. And then you had, after the Sinai massacre, the tragedy that happened in Sinai, killing 16 officers and soldiers, you had the removal of some of the anti-revolution figures within the defense and the interior establishment who were not really associated with the Sinai file. So you had the head of the Cairo Security Directorate, for example, General Mohsen Murad, was removed, and he's known to be anti-reform within the establishment, and also the guy like the head of the Central Security Forces, and so on. And then the ultimate move was yesterday removing the head of the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces, the SCAF, and his deputy, the two most senior figures, and putting a figure which comes very much from the ranks of the SCAF and from the very core of the military establishment as the new defense minister, and another figure, General Muhammad Assar, from also the SCAF as his deputy and assistant. So you had an increments going on in that direction since the government formation.
Gaudat Bagat, are you surprised, and are you surprised as well by the way, what does it tell you, the fact that it seems to all be going smoothly in Cairo?
Yes, I first thank you for having me, and I believe I'm a little bit surprised because, to start with, the marriage between the military and Muslim Brotherhood was not expected to last for very long, and probably the surprise, it was very short. Morsi has been in power for only a few weeks, and he made very bold movement to get rid of the head of the military, and just a few days ago they were together and they seemed to get along with each other. But it was expected that this marriage of convenience will not last for much longer, because basically what was happening in Egypt, it was Mubarakism without Mubarak. The same people who supported and worked for President Mubarak were still in power. And what President Morsi is doing to get rid of them in very gradual way, he appointed them as advisors, which is known in Egypt and in other countries. Basically, they do not have any power. So probably my surprise was how quickly it was, and I think he chose a very good time. What happened in Sinai gave him excuse to do something. And also we have to keep in mind, this is the last few days in Ramadan, where the majority of Egyptians, the majority of Muslims are very taking it easy, and there is nothing important happens. So I believe he chose very good time to make his movement.
It's interesting, Claude Guibal, because when you look at all the analysis that's come through the past 24 hours, this decision's been second-guessed, third-guessed. In some instances, some say it's part of some deal between Morsi and the army. But what we hear from our first two panelists here is that there is no deal. This is, in fact, Morsi cleaning house.
Morsi's cleaning house. I wouldn't say that the marriage of convenience is over with the SCAF. Morsi is cleaning the SCAF from the figures that were too linked to the old regime, such as Marshal Tantawi and Sami Anan. I mean, journalists are not fortune tellers, and it's very hard to say what's going on and what will go on and what happened exactly. But I wouldn't say there was no deal, because if the army was taken by surprise yesterday, I mean, Wood could have expected tanks to head to the presidential palace to stop President Morsi, I get there. He took this decision and he talked about that with leaders in the army. What is interesting is that the timing is very good. The timing is excellent, because considering what happened in Sinai 2 weeks ago when 16 soldiers had been killed, the image of the army and of Marshal Tantawi has deteriorated a lot with this massacre. People did not trust him anymore, because a lot of Egyptians said that the army was taken by surprise and was not able to expect such an attack in Sinai. And also, what is interesting is that the move was done very softly. Actually, nobody moved. A lot of Egyptians were happy to get rid of Tantawi because of his proximity with the former regime. And what is interesting is inside the army, the move was also welcome because he promoted, President Morsi promoted second-rank officers to high position. And it's an interesting signal it's giving to the troops that, one can move and that, the former regime does not exist anymore. You are in New Egypt now.
Abdul Mawgoud Dardari, does this, the way things have gone, the way that Claude Guibal has described them, does this mean that, in fact, we've perhaps to a certain degree overestimated the power of Egypt's military on the political scene?
I could not hear the whole question, but based on what I have just heard, I think the time is crucial for the Egyptian democracy. No doubt it was a surprise. The timing was a surprise, but we expected it to happen. Some of us expected it to happen earlier, others expected it to happen later. But I think it was a good move. It was very much needed for the stability of democracy, very important step towards the civil state that we've always wanted to have in Egypt, and also establishing freedom and justice for the Egyptian people right after the revolution. These were the main components of the revolution, and I think President Morsi did the right thing, and the Egyptians, majority of Egyptians that I met, that I represent as a member of the parliament, are very happy, and they're very proud of the president of the revolution to achieve the goals of the revolution.
Abdul Mawgoud Dardari, the Constitutional Court had dissolved parliament. Now that all this has happened, when do you expect to go back to work inside parliament?
Again, I have a connection problem. Can you repeat the question again, please?
Do you expect to go back to work as a parliamentarian, and do you expect shortly to be returning to parliament?
Yeah, I do expect it to happen soon. I call upon President Morsi either to call the parliament to convene and to start helping him in building the different institutions of democracy, or if he can ask for a public referendum so that the Egyptian people have their say and confirm the decision that they made earlier in the year, supporting democracy in Egypt, and elected for the first time in the past 60 years a parliament of the people, for the people, and by the people.
All right, so you're expecting to go back to work soon. Ahmed Mustafa, before we went on air, you were saying how you did not vote in the second round of the election because you didn't like the choice between, on the one hand, Mohamed Morsi, and on the other hand, a general from the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces. What are your thoughts now after what's transpired?
I am by default. I'm an anti-Muslim Brotherhood, but today I see that there is an elected president who took a decision which is a very, very popular decision. So I believe that we should all be standing behind him on this decision. We should not imagine that this was done against the will of the military. It's not possible, in my personal opinion. I'm quite sure that there is some kind of deal that has been passed. But from the point of view of advancing, of untangling the situation that we have today, this is an excellent move. We are going forward. We can now start to concentrate on developing our country and elect a parliament really representing the people. And the most important of all the of all what we have today on the table is the constitution. We have to finish our constitution, and it must be a real constitution representing the values of the Egyptian society.
All right, so give those elected a chance. A couple of reactions on Twitter. Azam Tamini of the Al Wiyar satellite television channel, he says Morsi's move yesterday in Egypt was not a coup, but the first in a long-awaited and urgently needed measures to reform the system, while Nirvana is not of the same mind. She tweeted this morning, "Good morning, Caliph. Waiting for your Islamic solution for Egypt's electricity crisis. My mother is suffering despite cotton garment. #Morsi." Let me ask you, Omar Ashur, we talk about democracy, we talk about who has power. We know that the social issues, the economic issues that are weighing down on Egypt, those are putting pressure on all sides.
That's true. I think the best ally for Morsi right now is some achievements on the ground, and he doesn't have to fix Egypt's eternal economic problems, but if he solved the garbage crisis that we have now, or attempted to limit the rate of unemployment, or poured some new investments in the country, I think he will be. These achievements will help him to gather more support and to give him more legitimacy to move forward. But having said that, what he did is quite significant. The ultimate test of democratic transition is whether the elected civilian has actual meaningful control over the armed forces and the security apparatuses. And what he did yesterday is a step forward in that direction. He was asserting the elected civilian superiority over the military establishment. It was not revolutionary. He did not appoint a civilian minister over the defense establishment, but he appointed somebody from the very core of that establishment. Still, it's a step forward. And regarding deals, I think we have to distinguish between what probably a certain faction in the SCAF wanted, which was the maximum. It wanted the power of the Algerian army coupled with the legal legitimacy of the Turkish army during the 1980s. They wanted to set up the Egyptian political landscape, have veto on constitutional matters, have veto in high politics, versus a faction that I see General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi belongs to, that wanted a minimum compared to that. They wanted a veto in high politics, in national security issues, in relationship vis-a-vis Israel, in relationship vis-a-vis Iran, in sensitive foreign policy issues, wanted probably the independence of their economic empire that does not pay taxes, have preferential custom and exchange rates, have land confiscation rights and ownership rights. And additionally, they probably wanted immunity as well for the heads of the military establishment. Those three were probably the minimum demand of the military establishment, and I think the compromise between this faction that came to the fore and the elected president was to negotiate these three minimums compared to another faction that wanted much more.
All right, and when we come back in the France 24 debate, we're going to look what it means for the future of Egypt's military and for the future, of course, the nation itself. You're watching the France 24 debate.